Hello there, and welcome back to another Birth Serenity podcast episode. Today, we continue with our series where we talk about all different kinds of fears that mothers face during pregnancy in regards to giving birth. Today's topic is quite a biggie, and that is the fear of having a caesarean birth. First of all, I do not want you to plan in great detail for a potential caesarean birth if you are actually hoping for a vaginal birth. Where the mind goes, the body will follow. So put all your energy and enthusiasm into planning what you hope for. However, with the right preparation, you can be empowered regardless of how your birth turns out. And that is what we always aim for here at Birth Serenity. We want mothers to have peace of mind and feel empowered regardless of how their birth turns out. So I hear this one a lot from women, whether you are planning a vaginal birth or a pre-labor elective cesarean. There are many reasons women fear this. And with the fear, there could possibly be the element of trauma if you did not go over this beforehand. So although I do believe that birth is a normal and natural event, sometimes caesareans are necessary and life-saving. While C-sections can be life-saving procedure for baby and or mom, it is important to remember not to discount your emotional well-being. If this happens unplanned and unexpected, it can leave you feeling scared and out of control. We often hear, well, at least the baby is okay following a C-section birth, but we need to acknowledge that there can be a lot of disappointment, grief, and trauma that comes with that experience. But I also know with the right preparation, you can still have peace about your birth without lasting trauma. Emotional well-being is imperative to bonding with your baby and confidence as a mother. So it is crucial to make sure you are prepared whichever way your birth turns out. Otherwise, you'll have a really hard time postpartum and taking care of your baby. My name is Carla Nivert and I'm a birth educator helping mamas all around the world to get informed and to have beautiful births. I love educating and sharing research-based information to empower women to take control of their birth plans. If you haven't already, please remember to rate our podcasts on the podcast platforms, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click the bell button to get notified whenever I upload new videos. You can go to birthserenity.com to download your free natural birth plan, birth affirmations, and much more. There you can also see a full list of resources that I've used to put this podcast episode together. First, let's look at reasons for an unplanned emergency caesarean birth. The term emergency C-section is commonly used, but actually it is not a very common occurrence. The first and the most commonly given reason for unplanned C-sections is failure to progress. Researchers published a report on over 38,000 mothers who had their first C-section birth. 35% of these mothers in the overall sample were due to the diagnosis of failure to progress or slow to progress in labor. But it gets even better. More than 4 in 10 of the first-time mothers who had a caesarean for failure to progress had not even reached 5 centimeters of dilation before they were taken to surgery. 6 centimeters is now considered the beginning of active labor. So this means that many of these mothers were still in very early labor or maybe not truly in labor at all when they were told that they weren't dilating fast enough. A larger study on over 230,000 mothers found that half of those who had induced labors and had caesareans for failure to progress had not reached 6 centimeters yet, indicating that they were not yet in active labor when their inductions were labeled as failed. For those mothers who have dilated to 10 centimeters and entered the second stage of labor, the pushing phase, 1 in 3 caesareans for failure to progress were performed before 3 hours of pushing in first-time mothers, while 1 in 4 caesareans for failure to progress were performed before 2 hours of pushing in people who had given birth before. This is of concern as recommendations are that longer than 3 hours of pushing in first-time mothers and longer than 2 hours of pushing in people who have given birth before, giving an extra hour or more on an individual's basis, such in those who have had epidurals, since epidurals can lead to a longer pushing phase. So I think I'll do an entire podcast on failure to progress soon, since there is so many valuable research on it, and it is something I want mothers to fully grasp. Just remember that slow to progress alone is not a reason for a C-section, as it is still progress. So what are practical things that you can do to avoid failure to progress? You can do things like moving around during labor, changing positions frequently, eat and drink if you want to, get into water, ask to not be constantly monitored, and then make use of labor tools like you learn in our antenatal class. These are designed specifically for situations like this to get your labor moving quicker and your mind at peace. The second most common reason for first-time cesareans is non-reassuring fetal heart tones. 23% of all first-time cesareans are given due to this reason. The tricky thing about this is what doctors see and hear is interpreted very differently by each individual. So what some doctors may see as an emergency, others might give you some more time. So if your doctors will let you, maybe ask for a second opinion on this one if the doctors diagnose this during your labor. So what are things we can do to hopefully avoid this? Researchers believe that when mothers labor in upright positions, there is a less risk of compressing the mother's aorta, which means there is a better oxygen supply to the baby. However, continuous electronic fetal monitoring generally restricts people to bed-lying positions, and having the mother change positions may be helpful for relieving umbilical cord compression that can cause abnormal fetal heart rate patterns. So be sure to move around during labor and change positions frequently. The third reason for a possible C-section can be something like a health problem. For example, high blood pressure is making the labor riskier for you and or your baby. And then there are other reasons that doctors sometimes give as excuses to do an C-section. So I've talked about some of them on this podcast before. Often they are not real reasons, but rather care provider fear, and then these reasons are used as scapegoats to get mothers into having unnecessary cesareans. Things like big babies or nuchal cords. So be sure to listen to those episodes if you hear any of these reasons given during your pregnancy as a reason to have a C-section. And then lastly, we will look at what are true emergencies. These include things like placental abruption, that is when the placenta separates from the inner wall of the uterus before birth, or a prolapsed cord, that is when an unborn baby's umbilical cord slips through the cervix and into the vagina after the mother's water breaks. So normally when a baby is born, you will see first their head crowning, but with a prolapsed cord, you will see the cord coming out first and not the baby's head. So during delivery, the prolapsed cord can become compressed by the baby's body, and this normally happens when waters are artificially ruptured and baby did not descend in its own time. Then there are things like uterine rupture, that is spontaneous tearing of the uterus where mama previously had a cesarean. And all of these I've just mentioned in point number 5 are very rare, but these are true emergency situations that don't leave you with time to discuss options. Of all of these listed, I think the most important thing to remember is as long as you, as a pregnant mother, and your baby are happy, healthy, and doing great, there is no distress and no signs of your health being compromised, I cannot see why a cesarean is necessary. So this is always a good point to start. If your doctor starts to mention a cesarean, ask them about the current health of yourself and your baby, and maybe ask them if you wait another hour or so, what is the worst that can happen? It is important to know if you are facing a true emergency or not. And that is really hard to tell because if something is not right with your baby, your immediate reaction is to panic and to give over. But this is where good antenatal education will help you and your partner to stay calm and to ask the right questions. Now let's look at how you can prepare for an unplanned cesarean. The The first thing you can do is to set up a Plan B birth plan and discuss it with your care provider during pregnancy. Make them sign a copy. Remember, if having an elective caesarean is your choice, it is worth educating yourself about delayed cord clamping at caesarean, skin-to-skin in theatre, and of recent interest to women, vaginal seeding. To know why I say this and the lifelong benefits it has for your baby, you can listen to the microbiome podcast episode I had with Tony Harmon. I'll leave a link below. You have to inform yourself about these topics and, most importantly, talk to your obstetrician about your values and wishes. Having an unplanned caesarean doesn't mean you have to give up all your birth preferences. In fact, this is the event in which you have to be most assertive. As the operating room is seen as the doctor's territory, if you want your wishes to be known and adhered to, you have to be informed. And having a plan B in place will make you feel more respected and in control throughout your birth experience. In Birth Serenity, we set up a Plan A and a Plan B birth plan, and I go through each of the necessary elements you need to have on there. The second thing you can do to prepare for an unplanned caesarean is to train your brain. If you are planning for a vaginal birth and find yourself incredibly fearful of needing a caesarean, this is where brain training comes into play and where I can help. Utilizing a fear release script, positive affirmations, visualizations, and hypnobirthing education could be of significant benefit to you. It is important to find someone who is willing to help and support you throughout your pregnancy to make 100% sure you are prepared, regardless which way your birth turns out. One of the many benefits of continuity care is the reduced rate of caesarean section. The third thing you can do is to have a support person with you, ideally the midwife you were planning to birth with, a doula, or a lactation consultant. Apart from your partner, these professionals will add immense value in theatre, advocating for you and foreseeing that your birth wishes are respected. Breastfeeding after a C-section might be more of a challenge, and that's why it is very important to have someone with you who can help you get that off to a great start. Doing a breastfeeding basics class during pregnancy, like the one in our antenatal program, is a great idea. Then you'll know more or less what to expect and what is normal. The fourth thing that you can do is to get someone to take photos. It is generally possible for someone to take photos of your baby being born, so ask your support person to bring a camera if they have one, and someone in the room will surely help you with that. Otherwise, hire a professional birth photographer. The reason why this could be helpful is for you to look back afterwards and to realize that this was still a worthy birth and still something that you can be proud of. And then the last thing you can do is to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions or to tell the doctors and midwives if you are feeling worried. If you have any special preferences, talk to your doctor or your midwife beforehand so they can try to support your choices. This is crucial. If you already now feel you have lost control because of the change of birth plan, you have to make sure you are listened to in the OR. Otherwise, this experience will leave you feeling helpless and traumatized long after. Now lastly, let's look at the C-section process so that you can know what to expect if your birth turns out this way. Like I've said before, I don't want you to spend too much time thinking about C-sections if natural birth is what you hope for. But you will feel more at peace if you do know what to expect. The unknown is a lot more daunting than something that you've gone over before. Usually mom will be taken on her bed to theatre or the OR, accompanied by a few nurses. Your partner will go into a separate room to get dressed in scrubs provided by the hospital, and after he changed, he will join you in the operating room. Typically, only your partner will be allowed with you, but some hospitals will also give permission to your midwife, your doula, or a birth photographer to join as well. The anesthesiologist will then give mom a spinal block, which is a numbing medication, and if you already had an epidural, that will not be necessary. They will just increase the dosage to numb mama from the chest down. If it is a major emergency, which luckily, like I've said before, is very, very rare, they will give mom general anesthesia, which will make her unconscious for surgery. But again, thankfully, this is very rarely done. So who will be in the operating room? Quite a few people involved during a C-section. There will be the obstetrician who is doing the actual C-section, their assistant doctor, the anesthesiologist, a surgical nurse, a midwife, maybe a pediatrician to look after your baby, or other assisting nurses. So a lot of people to keep both mom and baby safe, at least 6 professionals, I would say. Your partner and your anesthesiologist will be up by your head. So there will be a drape screen just below your chest to keep everything sterile where the doctors are working and to make sure that nobody can touch there. Dads, if you don't want to see the actual procedure, you don't have to. Just focus on mom and encouraging her. And during the procedure, just remember that you will hold your baby real soon. Mamas, you won't feel any pain during the procedure, but definitely a lot of moving and tugging as the doctors are working to get baby out. But again, you can see it in a positive light as all those moving and tugging is your baby that's being born. How long does a C-section take? From the time the incision is made to the time that the baby is born can be done in as little as 2 minutes or as long as half an hour, depending on the circumstances, but normally around 10 minutes. Once the doctors are sure that baby is healthy, the obstetrician will start to close you up, the most complex part of the C-section. This takes around 45 minutes. Your provider will stitch up the uterus, realign the outer layers, and close the skin with either dissolving stitches, which take longer to put in, or staples, which require removal a few days later. It's common to experience nausea and shaking at this stage. It is normal, and just know that your anesthesiologist will take good care of you. Then you're moved to the recovery room where you can start bonding with your baby. Be sure to discuss this with your care provider beforehand. You'll spend the next hour or so in the recovery room with a heart monitor and an oxygen saturation monitor attached to your finger. Your legs will start coming back to life, and sometimes this happens gradually, but sometimes in spurts. Again, be assertive about what you want. This is still your body and your story. When you want your partner with your baby, when you want skin to skin with your baby, will baby need to be taken elsewhere? Can your partner go with baby? Will they then have time for skin to skin? These are all your choices. Make them known. Also remember that before and during the procedure, you can still use tools from your Birth Serenity toolkit to stay calm and focused. This has helped a lot of mothers in these challenging times before. Then, once everything in theatre and the recovery room are done, you will be moved to your postpartum hospital room where you can start spending quality time with your baby. You can drink all their perfection in and fall in love all over again. You'll likely stay in hospital for 3 to 4 days if everything goes well. Use this time to recover the best you can, rest as much as you can, and ask for help. You have all the professionals right there to take care of you and baby. So make good use of it. And then just to end off this episode, my last thoughts. Sometimes birth does not go as planned, because if left to unfold as nature intended, the result would be a poor outcome. Fortunately, this is very rare. Appropriate intervention can and does save mothers and babies. However, women are left doubting their body and can then judge themselves and their birth experience as a failure. For these women, I want you to start thinking about it this way. The choice of intervention and having a C-section will then represent the ultimate expression of motherhood. Allowing your own body to be cut open to save your baby is surely the epitome of mothering and unconditional love. Birth is not a predictable event, and that can be daunting, but the good news is the more informed you are and the better you understand the process of birth, your chances are better to have the outcome that you truly desire. I had mamas in my natural birth antenatal class who ended up having C-sections but still walked away feeling grateful for the births they had. And that comes with the right support and preparation. And again, remember, if vaginal birth is what you hope for, keep focusing on that. Are you pregnant, hoping for a smooth, calm, beautiful natural birth? Let us help you with that. In the Birth Serenity antenatal program, we focus on natural birth and would be honored to help and support you to prepare yourself in the best possible way, both mentally and physically, for your birth. Our aim is to help you find peace and accept your birth whichever way it turns out. For more information, go to birthserenity.com.